Hi everyone. So Megan asked me to share some thoughts about what's been going on at the moment, particularly sparked by the murder of George Floyd in the US. And let me just say first, um, even just being asked to talk about issues around race and racism as a straight white middle class man makes me feel really uncomfortable. Um, that is all of the privileges, basically. Like no one's ever really put a barrier up in my way, and so just want to acknowledge that straight away that that's where I'm coming from with this. With a lot of privilege, and so I really want to approach this really only being able to talk about what I've seen, what I've learned, what I'm trying to learn, what I'm trying to do um, out of this situation. Saw something really powerful on social media a few days ago. Person of color who said, for most of us, for people who are white, this is day two. You know, day two of learning, of educating, of experiencing um, this, and for people of color, for people from other marginalized groups, it's been their whole lives. So that's just where I want to start from. Um, I think for me at the moment, the overriding feelings have come out of what I've seen, whether it's George Floyd's killing, um, other horrific things that have happened to people of colour. Whether it's Belly Malinga, the TFL worker who was spat at while doing her job in a London train station and contracted COVID and died and has received no justice for that. You know, those things that have happened. I think for me, the three overriding feelings really are one is anger at what is happening, and anger at what hasn't happened. In terms of justice, recourse, lament, just like a seriously heavy heart about what we're seeing, about those images, the hurt and the pain that's being caused to particularly Black and African American communities in the US and Black and other communities here and more widely around the world, just lamenting and wanting to share that heavy heart, and also conviction as someone who's not experienced racism in my life, conviction about the things I have done in my life. If there have been times that I've had prejudices about people, even if I'm not aware that I've done that, things I haven't done, where I've seen things, seen people being racist, seen things that have been racist and not called them out, and conviction about things I need to do, what I need to do in my own life to be better, to understand better, to be an ally. So I think that conviction, I think, is something that's really come out of this. And you know, I think Rev might have shared this on the Facebook group earlier today, but there's a quote that sat with me from Dr. Martin Luther King, who obviously was another incredible, inspiring figure who himself was murdered by people who didn't believe that African Americans deserve to be treated in the same way as white people in the United States. You know, that he said that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, and I think that's, for me, thinking about sort of what we can do to take what I can do out of this situation. It's that this isn't something far away. This isn't something that is someone else's problem. That if there are people in this world who are facing injustice, then that's a problem for me as another human being, for me as a Christian. Megan asked, you know, what have you learned about the things you've seen and heard? I mean, so much already, and I've learned that I don't know a lot. I've been reminded about the structural injustices that being faced by people of colour across the world. I think when we see it in some of the ways that we've seen it, that racism feels like it's hate. It's the brutal murder of someone because of the color of their skin. It's the fact that someone can't go for a run in a certain neighborhood because other people might decide that they're out of place there. It's the fact that here in the UK, black people are stopped and searched more times, much more than people who are white. Like we see that hate, we see that way of really just visceral hate, and we associate that with racism. But I think what I've really learned from some of the stuff I've been trying to read is that racism isn't just about hate. It's about all the ways that those with power and privilege have made and continue to make it harder for people who aren't like them to live in the world as equals. For me, I think that's how I try and understand it. And I think so. What I've learned is that we need to deconstruct those things. We need to bring them down. We need to pull those barriers down. And I think that's sort of maybe where a lot of us are now. We're going, okay, well, what can we do? How can we tackle this? Megan asked if there are some things I could suggest to encourage you all to engage with this issue. And I go back to what I said at the start. Like, I don't know a lot. A lot of what I'm saying is definitely not right. Like, it's just what I've been reflecting on, and I'm learning. There's no way that I getting it's all right. I'm bound to get things wrong. That's what happens when we're learning. That's what happens when we're trying to educate ourselves. So please do challenge me and others you hear speaking about race and racism if you disagree, or even if you agree. You go, but why do I think that? Why am I feeling that? You need to hear it. I need to hear that, and that's how we learn, and that's how we improve. So I'm really sorry that I'm not on live with you. I've got to look after Sam this afternoon. But yeah, if there are things that I've said, I'm saying, suggesting, that you're like, that's a load of rubbish, then please do leave a comment. I'll definitely try and watch the live video back. I'm really, really interested to hear what you guys are all thinking about. But in terms of how I want to encourage you, I think there are four words that came to mind out of all of this. So they are love, wisdom, hope, and action. So I'll just talk about each of those a little bit. Megan, I'm really sorry if this is going on too long, and I'm just rambling, so feel free to cut me off at any point and get back to the more important discussions. But yeah, love. We are called to love. We are the family of God. We love because he first loved us. That's what it says in 1 John 4. We love because he first loved us. I'm just going to keep reading a couple of verses from this because I think it just goes to the heart of what we're called to do. Whoever claims to love God yet hates a brother or sister is a liar. For whoever does not love their brother and sister whom they have seen cannot love God whom they have not seen. And he has given us this command: anyone who loves God must also love their brother and sister. That's where we've got to start. We've got to start with love. It all starts with love. And excluding people from our love is not on the table. Jesus makes that so clear. He says, in his teaching, really, really unequivocally, this is what you do. You love God, you love your neighbour, you love your enemy. I don't think that excludes anyone. That pretty much covers everyone, right? Try and think of someone that doesn't fit into those categories. Every single person is fearfully and wonderfully made by God. Every single one of you, me, everyone you know. We have been created by God. He loved us so much that he created us. And so when we fail to acknowledge that beauty of every person, we are choosing to ignore how God has created that person. So love, I think that's got to be our first response, even for those people who we are seeing perpetrating horrific things. That doesn't mean we've got to agree with them or like them, but we have to start by refusing to do anything other than love. So I think, that's the first thing, love. Second thing, wisdom. there's been so much information going out on social media, in the news, and so on, and really helpful things. I've seen lots, particularly on Instagram, people doing like really helpful lists and reflections on, particularly for people, white people who are trying to understand this, what you can do to be an ally, what you can do to amplify the voices of people of colour, and organisations working for racial justice. So I think wisdom is about education, but it's also about being wise to good fruit and bad fruit that's out there. Like, we know social media is now awash with fake news, with misinformation, and I think that is something that we need to test and be really clear about, like finding good sources, good reliable sources, not just things that back up what we think we already know, but going to people who are trusted, who are respected. Organisations like Black Lives Matter have got really good resources there to help educate. So I'd really encourage you to go and check out some of that if you haven't already. I'm catching up on this. Like, there have been books that I've wanted to read that I've just decided, they've fallen down the pile, or I've picked up something else instead. And actually, I've really decided to make a commitment to read some books in the coming weeks that will really hopefully challenge and confront some of the things that I think I know or think I understand. Two particular ones that I'm going to be reading that might be of interest are Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race by Renée Edo-Lodge. Rose has read this and recommended it to me. Really think about how, as a white person, as a person full of privilege, I understand race and get a different perspective on that. And the second book that's being recommended by a lot of people online, so I can't speak to know much about it at the moment, but is Me and White Supremacy by Layla Saad. And again, I think that's something I'm really hoping to work through that book and really try and understand, as a white person, as I said, with a lot of privilege, what that means and how I can go about trying to either use that or deconstruct it. So those are a couple of books that I'm looking to read. There's so much that's been done in terms of documentaries and other things around these issues, raising these issues. A documentary that's really I felt was really powerful, again, is one focused specifically on the States, on the US. It's called The 13th on Netflix, particularly about racial inequality in the prison system in the US, and why prison system in the US has a large number of African American people in it, far higher than the percentage of the population, and looking at the structure, the racist policies and the racial inequality that has led to that situation. I'd also recommend a film, dramatization of the life of an amazing man called Bryan Stevenson. I wouldn't be surprised if you might have heard about him from Rev. Incredible advocate for racial justice and social justice in the United States. And they made a film of his life last year called Just Love, starring Michael B. Jordan. And yeah, that again, hugely powerful, the testimony of his life fighting for these for equality and justice in the States. And I recognise that they're all quite potentially heavy things, things that will be quite intense to read or to watch. And so, without wanting to sound like flippant, but actually I think there's a couple of things that you might want to think about sticking on the TV if you want something lighter, but that's also really thought-provoking. I'd really recommend the TV series Blackish, which is a hilarious show, but also really highlights for the family, the African American family, that's the main characters, what it's like to to live in their situation. And it's some really powerful, really powerful episodes in that. But it's also really funny. And the other thing is you might all be a bit too young to remember it from the first time around, but I would really recommend watching The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That show, I know you probably think, oh, Will Smith, he's a funny guy, but there is some incredibly powerful stuff in there again about his own experiences, Will Smith's own experiences, and the experiences of others, young black men growing up in the States, in different parts of the US. And yeah, again, something lighter, but also I think really thought-provoking in a lot of situations. So sorry, I've talked a lot about the things that we can watch or read, but that's just some reflections on what I've been thinking about there. Let me move on to hope. I think it can be really hard to hope at the moment, to be hopeful. Firstly, with all that's going on with COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown, and then to see what's going on in the States and what it's sparked across the world, it can feel like a really desperate time. But I think we're called not to despair. We see throughout the Bible and through God's story in our world that he's bigger than anything. So I think we really need to reclaim hope as Christians, as people of faith. We need to be actively hopeful. We need to find things to be hopeful about and share them with others. We do, of course, need to highlight injustice and call things out that we think are wrong, but sharing hope, the good things we see in people around us, the actions that we see, I think that's what stops us from being paralysed by the more negative emotions that a lot of us will be experiencing, a lot of people will be experiencing at the moment. So I think choose hope, reclaim hope, and the light that hope brings. And then finally, that last word that came to mind is action. Like, I think there's that compulsion and that conviction to feel like we need to do something, we need to respond. And I think that sometimes we feel like that has to be something big, extravagant. It has to be something that completely changes our lives, that changes the lives of other people. And I think that's a really wonderful place to be in, a really wonderful emotion to have. But I think that we also need to be kind to ourselves and remind ourselves that action doesn't have to be big or extravagant. Mother Teresa famously said, there's no, I'm going to get this quite wrong, and I'm just trying to remember it, but it's basically, there is no such thing as great, doing things with great love. You can only do small things with great love. There is no, I've just ruined that quote, but basically you can only do small things with great love. So I think, action could be checking in with a friend to see how they're doing in the midst of everything that's going on. It might be calling out someone who says something racist that you hear. But equally, it might be signing a petition to call for justice for George Floyd and his family, or donating to one of the amazing memorial funds that's been set up so that the families of those who have been killed can be supported, and their quest for justice for their loved ones can be supported. So there are so many things, but I think hopefully between you, you have ideas, you have thoughts about what that response can be. If you think there needs to be a response from the church, from us collectively, I think that's something to talk about. I think there are so many options there, but don't feel overwhelmed by the fact that there are so many options. I've just seen that I've been talking for 20 minutes, so I'm so sorry for that, and I hope some of these ramblings has been helpful, and I really hope your discussions are helpful, and that this has been a vaguely helpful way to think through some of the things that are going on. Thanks, everyone. See ya.